There are some moments in life, there are some memories that you forget pretty quickly. Some things that I did last week that I probably don't even remember. Maybe some things that I did yesterday that I don't remember. But then there are things that I did when I was a kid that just kind of stay in my mind, stay locked in my mind, and I see it and and can remember it like it was yesterday. One of those moments is when I was in elementary school. And I was on the playground. We were playing tag, and a whole bunch of boys. There weren't any girls playing. Sorry, just a whole bunch of boys, and we were all playing tag, and so we were all kind of running around. And one of my friends came running up to me, and he's like, "Not playing, not playing." And he came up to me. I have something I want to say to you. And he said, "Hey," and he named one of our other friends. I'll leave him unnamed. He said he's going to come over to you here in a little bit, and he's going to ask if you want to hang out with him this weekend and see a movie. And I want you to say no. All of us are saying no. And so just say no. Why should I say no? Because we're mad at him. I wasn't mad at him. But I looked around, and some of the other friends, they're all shaking their heads like this. And I didn't know what to do. And probably 5 minutes later, this friend came up to me, and he said, "Hey, Andy, do you want to go see this movie?" I'm pretty sure it was the movie Explorers, about these kids that get kind of swept up and taken up in a spacecraft, and hijinks ensue. And I really wanted to see this movie. And and so there was part of me that just wanted to say, yeah, let's go see this. But he asked me this question, and I kind of looked around, and all these other kids were looking at me. And the one kid that talked to me was like, I replay that scene over and over and over again in my head. And in my head, I stare the kid down that told me what to say. I give him the eye. And then I look back at my friend, and I say, absolutely. Let's do it. Let's go to the movies. I'm standing with you no matter what. That's what I say in my head. But that's not actually what happened. Instead, I looked this friend in the eyes, swallowed, and I said, why would I want to go to the movies with you? And he gave me this look that I will never forget. This hurt look. It was more than a hurt look. It was a hurt look aimed right at me, as if to say, you too, Andy? I expected all these other guys to be like that, but you? Even you? And then he put his eyes down and he walked away. Our friendship was never the same after that. I so wish I could get that moment back, but I can't. Last Sunday, we were in chapter 3, and we looked at a verse. Go ahead and put it up. Ecclesiastes 3:16. Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, even there was wickedness, and in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. And we talked about that verse last week, and we talked about how Solomon is saying wickedness is everywhere under the sun. Everywhere you go, there is wickedness. even in the place of justice, even in the civil courts where there's supposed to be fair trials and you're supposed to get a fair shake and it's supposed to be a place of justice, he says, even there's wickedness. And then even in the place of righteousness, that's right here, church. In Solomon's day, he's talking about the temple, he's talking about the places of worship. That even if you expect wickedness everywhere else, he's saying even in the places of worship was wickedness. Wickedness. I defined that word wickedness last week. It means violence, but beyond violence, it's talking about any kind of wickedness, lies, betrayals, angry, hurtful actions or words, abandonment, accusations, unjust judgments, gossip, and we could go on and on and on and on. That's wickedness. And Solomon is saying there's not a place that you can go on earth that wickedness has not put its footprint on. And when you and I experience wickedness, because every one of us has experienced wickedness in our life, especially when that wickedness comes from friends or family or church, a part of us just kind of shrivels up. We tend to have shields, internal shields that kind of go up to protect ourselves. We consciously or unconsciously just kind of back away from people because we're trying to protect ourselves. We stop allowing people in. We stop allowing people to see us, to truly know us, to experience the real us. Because we think, I'm just going to get hurt again. If I open myself up, I'm just going to get hurt again. But by doing that, we prevent ourselves from truly experiencing what you and I were made for. Relationships, community. Sometimes we even go so far as to become like the man that Solomon is going to talk about in this next part of the passage in chapter 4. Let's go to 4:7. Again, I saw vanity under the sun. One person who has no other, either son or brother, yet there's no end to all of his toil, and his eyes are never satisfied with riches, so that he never asks, for whom am I toiling and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business. So we're introduced to a person. And all we know about this person is that he has no other. He has no other. And we're left to wonder, why does he have no one in his life? Why does he have no one in his life? Is it because of circumstance? Well, somewhat. He has no brother. He had no control over that. But he also has no son. Is that circumstance or choice? We don't know. But no friends? No one? That's a choice. Having no one in your life is a choice. We're not told all the circumstances of his life, but in the context of the passage, in other words, what we see before this story and what we see after, what we see before is what we talked about last week, that people are oppressed. People are put down. People are harassed. There is wickedness in the land, and people suffer under it because of other people. And because of the context of what we're going to see after this, of real relationships, real connection, and the need for that. We can surmise about this particular man gives us a clue that he's probably isolated himself. He's pouring himself into his work to escape the hurt and the wounds caused by others. So he's become a workaholic. Says there is no end to his toil. He just throws himself into work, and that's all he does is work, 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 work. He's trying to escape life. He's trying to not have a space where he just sits and thinks and ponders. He's looking for satisfaction. He's looking for it in his work, but he can't find it. He can't find peace. He can't find fulfillment. He can't find purpose, and he can't find meaning. His eyes, it says in the passage, are never satisfied. Nothing's enough. Nothing fits the bill. And Solomon calls this man's life vanity. Vanity. Smoke. Meaningless. It's like illustration that I used several weeks ago. It's like that cat that sees that laser dot running around, and it's trying so hard to catch it. It's running around, wasting all of its energy, and the moment it thinks it has it, it's gone. That's what vanity means. We chase and chase and chase, think we find it, only to discover it's not really there. It was an illusion. And Solomon says that's this man's life. Living alone, having no one. Trying to work, to find meaning, find satisfaction in life without other people is vanity. It's vanity. Think about it for a second. In the Garden of Eden, you remember that, Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. We're talking before the fall, before Adam and Eve sinned. As a matter of fact, we're going to go before Eve was created. So there's just Adam and the garden and God. Adam had a good and meaningful job that God gave him to tend the garden. He had beautiful surroundings. We can't even imagine what the earth looked like, what the garden looked like, because we're living on this sin-scarred world right now. We can't even imagine how beautiful that garden was that Adam lived. We can't imagine the food that he was able to eat and the way that it tasted, unhindered by sin. And work, yeah, he had to work, but his work wasn't burdensome. There were no thorns yet on the ground. The ground wasn't dry and brittle. It was lush. And work was a joy. He had lots of animals, and they weren't afraid of him, and they weren't mean. Even the snakes. And best of all, he walked and talked with God. God would visit him and literally walk and talk with him. I mean, folks, what could be better than that? And yet, this is what God said about Adam's life in that garden, that moment. It is not good that the man should be alone. All the way through chapters 1 and 2 of Genesis, God keeps saying, and it was good, and it was good, and it was good, and it was good. And this is the first time in Scripture that God says it's not good. Adam had everything that we would ever possibly want and more. And yet God still says it's not good because he's alone. So animals were brought before Adam, but they didn't fit the bill. Sorry, animal lovers. Sorry, dog lovers. As much as you might think that a dog is man's best friend, it's not true. It's not true. In the end, only another human being fit the bill, was right for the job. What does that tell us? We need each other. We need each other. Which is why Solomon follows up the story of the man who was all alone with this next verse in verse 9. Two are better than one. Two are better than one. Interestingly, that word better is the exact same word that God used over and over and over again in the book of Genesis 1 and 2. Good. Good. It's the exact same word. It's just now talking about two. So it's better. That word better is a very rich word. It has three separate meanings. Meaning number one, it means it is moral, it is correct, it's the way it's supposed to be. So that's the first meaning of this word better. It's moral, it's correct, it's the way it's supposed to be. Second meaning of this word is that it's pleasing. It brings happy emotions. It affects us emotionally. And the third meaning of better is that it's fruitful, it's advantageous, it's profitable. Those are three distinct meanings, but they are all wrapped up in that one word. It's moral, it's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to affect us emotionally. And it's profitable. It's fruitful for us. Solomon is saying, when he says two are better than one, he's saying being in relationships, being in community, having friends and or family is the way God intended for us to live, even before the fall. It's the way he always intended for us to live. We need God, absolutely. First and foremost, we need a relationship with God. It's vital, not just for salvation, but for life here under the sun. We need God. But we also were created to need each other in relationships and in community. And when we shield ourselves from everyone, when we deprive ourselves of those relationships, we're depriving ourselves from one of our basic needs in life. And I get it. I get it. Opening ourselves up to others can and will bring heartache and pain and wounds. Why? Because we live here under the sun, and wickedness has its footprint everywhere you go. Even here. Even here in this place. I get it. I hate it. But I get it. But opening ourselves up to others also brings us joy and peace and laughter. And God's saying two are better than one also because it's more fruitful. It's more profitable. What we're able to do by ourselves is far exceeded by what we're able to do with each other. having 4 hands instead of 2, or many more hands instead of just 2. And you add to that different strengths and gifts and abilities of different people. That's profitable. That's fruitful. Not convinced, not ready to step out there and truly have friends that matter? And Solomon gives us some examples. Next part of verse 9, again he says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. A good reward for their toil. In a physical and monetary sense, Solomon is saying that having 2 people work together is more profitable. That's that third definition of that word better. Even though they're going to have to split the profits, they're able to make and accomplish far more than they would ever be able to do on their own. It's more profitable. But the word reward can also be used in other ways. The work can be rewarding creatively with 2 people as well, sharing ideas, sharing dreams, sharing skills, sharing gifts. And it could be rewarding emotionally because you're not alone. You're not doing it alone. Sharing not just the workload, but the stress and the joys as well. You know, for the past 17 years, I've been the lone pastor. And it has its advantages, it has its disadvantages. I look at some other churches that are a little bit bigger and they've got multiple staff, and I'm like, oh, I really wish I had that. I'm not vying that we hire somebody else. I know we don't have the money to do that, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not pushing that. But what I'm saying is, I look at what I can do, and I think, how much more effective would it be to have another person with me that has different skills and different gifts, and that we could share a vision and share a dream and move forward together. Anytime you have more people working together towards a dream, it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit better. It's a little more fruitful. It's a little more joyful. Because we were made to be in relationship. That's why Jesus, when he wanted to send out his disciples and begin to have them tell people about Jesus, he sent them out 2 by 2 so that they could have someone else to lean on. But it wasn't just so they could have someone to lean on. It was for some practical reasons as well. It was for protection. And that's what we're going to see in these next few verses in Ecclesiastes. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie down together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. So we have several comments here from Solomon as he's giving examples of why 2 are better than 1. And in all of these examples, he's using one theme here, and it's picturing a group of people traveling together on a journey. They're walking through the countryside. The ground around where he lived was notoriously pocketed with pits, either because they were man-made pits that people made to trap animals, or just naturally there were lots of pits around, as well as lots of ledges, and guess what? There were no guardrails. And so people would be traveling, and it would be getting late, and no flashlights, no street lights. They would have to watch out where they're walking, or they might just fall into a pit. And if they were by themselves, they wouldn't be able to get out But if they had a companion with them, he would be able to lift him out and help him out. When you fall down, physically, yes, but also when you fall down emotionally or spiritually, it's important to have someone next to you that's there to help you stand again. And I'm not just talking about married couples, folks. I'm not even primarily talking about married couples. I'm talking about friends. Because that's what Solomon's talking about. Companions, friends. Someone who isn't going to ridicule you or laugh at you or judge you when you fall, but is instead going to extend a hand and help you back up. And when night hit and they were on the road traveling, well, guess what? The temperature would go down really quick, and it was cold. And there was no Hilton, there was no Best Western, there was no Holiday Inn where they could say, hey, let's go off here for the night. No, they would just go off of the trail, and they would hunker down and sleep on the floor, and it was cold. So they would go back to back and use body warmth to keep each other warm. This passage is not about a husband and wife. It's about friends. Help friends on a journey. And it wasn't uncommon to face other travelers on the road, oftentimes very unfriendly travelers. If you're alone, you're probably going to get beat up, maybe even killed. But if you have more guys than they have, you're probably safe. You need to have people on your side. You need to have people on your side. And then Solomon ends this section with a proverb. Last part of verse 12. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. So again, Solomon is giving us this picture of a group of friends that are on a journey together, helping each other, protecting each other, having each other's backs. Isn't that the theme of like a million different movies? A group of friends on a journey, and at different points in the movie, someone falls down, someone messes up, someone does something stupid, and the other friends have to help them out, pick them back up, and they keep going on this journey, and they eventually get to where they're going together, and they're closer for it. It's like the theme of a billion different movies. Why? Why are there so many movies about that? Because that's what we were created for. It's what God made us for. Community, relationships, being by each other's side. One person on his or her own is not what God intended. And just sitting back and saying, all I need is God. All I need is God. It sounds spiritual, but it's not. It's an escape. All I need is God and my dog. Sorry, not true. Well, I have my family. Well, if you have a wonderful, loving family, that's huge. That's awesome. That's great. But we were created for more than just family, too. God intended for us to speak into each other's lives as friends and brothers and sisters in Christ. Two are better than one. But here's the thing, Solomon's saying. But you know what? Three is even better. Three's even better. But you might say, okay, I hear you, Pastor Andy, I get it, but what about the pain? What about the pain? You don't know what people have done to me. You don't know how people have betrayed me. You don't know how people have abandoned me. Maybe I don't. But Jesus does. He understands. Jesus was rejected. Jesus was despised. Jesus was betrayed. Jesus was abandoned by all of his disciples at one point. But he kept loving. And he still, after all of that, he still came back and entrusted them to lead an entire world to him. I never would have done that. These guys are boneheads. But Jesus said, no, those are my guys. Those are my guys. Oh, that we would be like Jesus. But I do get it, because I live in this world under the sun too. I've been rejected. I've been betrayed. I get it. It's hard to trust when you've been burnt too many times. So I want to leave 3 practical insights as we wrap up here. Number 1, make Jesus your anchor relationship. There is no relationship that you could ever have that is more important than your relationship with Jesus. Make Jesus your anchor relationship, because though any and everyone else may betray you, may walk away from you, may leave you, Jesus never will. He never will. He will never abandon you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He will always be faithful to you. I guarantee it. And you need to make him your anchor relationship. So when everything else is coming crashing down, you remain firm in your relationship with him. He's the one that holds us through our whole life. That's first. Second, be wise with who you open up to. We live in the world under the sun, where wickedness has put its stamp everywhere. So needing people, being created for community, doesn't mean that we open up to everyone in equal amounts. Some people we can be very vulnerable with, and some people we probably should not. Ask for wisdom from God to know who to trust and who to keep it a little closer to the vest. I want to encourage people. I love when people share during our Freedom Story time. But there are some things that shouldn't be shared during that time. There is a measure of vulnerability that shouldn't be given to the entire group. I love coming to men's group, and we're able to be a little bit more vulnerable there. It's a smaller group of guys. And I love those guys, love you guys. But there are still yet some things that probably shouldn't be shared, even in that context of a group of guys. But you should have 2 or 3 or 4 people that you just share everything with. Because that's what we were made for community, for depth of relationship. And if you don't have those 3 or 4 people that are outside of your family then you are missing out of what God has intended for you in your life. Number three, be who you want others to be for you. Sometimes our focus is just always out there. Well, that person that person needs to be more faithful. That person I can't trust. And, well, what about you? Are you trustworthy? Are you faithful? Or are you one who gossips, talks behind others' backs? Be the person you want others to be for you. Ask God to continue to change you to be that person. I'll tell you, the memory of that story from elementary school lives in my head. And I don't want ever to do that to another person for the rest of my life. I want to be the person. I want to be the person that when all the peer pressure is coming down, yeah, get mean, say this. I want to be the person that looks that friend that's being isolated, that feels alone, that is being betrayed. I want to look them in the eyes and I want to say, I'm with you. Stick with me. We'll get through this together. That's who I want to be. That's who we all should want to be. Will we fail? Yes. Because we're all sinful. Every one of us. But Jesus never will. And as we put our anchor in Him, we're able to lend a hand even to someone who has messed up and help them back up. I'm sorry. I messed up. I got you. Let's do this together. That is who we were meant to be. Let's be the church. And let's be people who are open to letting people in. All else is vanity. Would you pray with me? Lord Jesus, this is a hard message because the truth of it is clear as day, and yet it's so hard because we live in a world that's filled with wickedness, and it's so hard when we walk forward and we think, I can trust this person, and then they betray us. Lord, heal our wounds. Heal our wounds with your life. And Lord, continue to work in us. Help us to look in the mirror and realize that, I failed too. I failed too. Wickedness also has its stamp on me. And yet there's Jesus. Lord, help us to walk forward together, imperfectly maybe, but together, to become and to do all that you have intended for us. And I thank you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. A few questions as we leave our time this morning. Have you built up walls around your heart to protect yourself? Are you trying to go it alone? How's that working for you? And then, who are two or three people outside of your family that you could take a risk with and be vulnerable with this week? I will challenge you to do that. Thank you for being here. I pray that God brings us back next week to worship together in community. I love our time together. You are dismissed.